From Sieglinde Plocki from Berlin.
It is a big pleasure to me to welcome you now in my hometown, on my university where I worked for so long. And I promise you, it will not be heavy food, but you will be able to digest this tonight. So talking about the Freie Universität, we have to take in mind first how was the situation when everything started here. We had in 1946-47, German's capital was in the middle of Soviet occupation zone, and in itself divided in 4 zones as well: the British, the French, the German, the American, and the Soviet occupation zone. Berlin was in ruins in great part. The 4 Allied forces had the saying. They gathered in the Allied Kommandantura, which you see the building there, until 1948, when the Russians withdrew shortly after the Berlin blockade. You see the 3rd meeting of the 4 town mayors and how it was during those days here, yeah? After the Russians had withdrawn, the 3 powers still used that building until Germany's reunification and held their last meeting on October 2nd in 1990. Shortly after that, Freie Universität Berlin rented this house for its presidential office and the connected administrative departments. Also the international department, and that's where I was working. So, in the parts where the Soviets had their meetings. So, until now, that building, who has visited it, has a flair of cooperation and uniting efforts. The former Friedrich Wilhelms University, then Universität unter den Linden, and later called nowadays Humboldt-Universität, was situated in the Soviet sector of the city. In January 46, it was reopened for students. How the political atmosphere was can be illustrated by a look at the elections to the Students' Council of Kaiser Friedrich's University in 1947. It gives a clear picture. That was 76% of the students voted to fill 28 seats, and that is a percentage of voters which nowadays the students would dream of, 76%. Huh? So of those 28, 12 seats fell to students with any political position, not belonging to any political party. 5 to the Social Democrats, 2 to the Christian Democrats, 3 to the then established Socialist Communist Party of the GDR, which was later founded. On Soviet pressure, the Socialists and the Communists had united 1946 in the SED, the Socialist Unity Party of Germany. March 1947, several students were arrested by the Soviet counterintelligence, and Georg Wratzilo, that is the upper one, a medical student, was arrested in November 44, accused of troop demoralization, and arrested without court decision, imprisoned as a police prisoner at KZ Großrosen, later at Buchenwald. You see, the old concentration camps were used for those prisoners as well. It is not exactly mentioned when he gets out, but at the end of November 45, he is elected chairman of the Students' Association in the Youth Committee of the city of Berlin. During the manifestations on May 1st in 47, 30 students who had been acknowledged victims of fascism protested against a banner promoting the SED as the main entrance of the Berlin University. The consequence of this was that Wratzilo was dismissed of his position immediately, and as an SED member took over his chairmanship. Wratzilo had expressed that he wanted to submit the university administration to the Berlin Urban Administration, the so-called Magistrat, instead of the Soviet Head Office for National Education. So in 74, Wratzilo was arrested again, and in December 48, sentenced to 25 years labor camp. He is first imprisoned in the Soviet special camp Sachsenhausen, later in Bautzen, and then Brandenburg. And he is released in 1956. The next student, Gerda Rösch, also important for this events. She is arrested by the NKVD, that is this secret service, to 25 years of labor camp by the Soviet military court because of supporting and being a member of an underground movement at the university. She was imprisoned in Bautzen and also released only in 1956. And then Manfred Klein, the next case. He studied German philology, later at the university, at the Freie Universität FU. He then is a member of the Catholic youth and also a member of the first Students' Council. He was arrested on March 13, 1947, and sentenced to 25 years of labor camp. And he was accused of alleged spying. He was released also in 1956. All this had happened in March 47, and a student of that time, Dr. Horst W. Hartwig, that was then the later international dean, member of the Student Council, also a medical student, reported as a contemporary witness of the students on Wratzilo's arresting. He said, "Those students like Wratzilo were, in the eyes of the Soviets, prominent anti-Russian Germans. They could only be fascists. The normal unpolitical students at the Berlin University reacted either frightened or they just kept silent. The world does not consist," he said, "of heroes only. But there were enough students who reacted first disgusted, and this disgust turned into rejection and even hatred, because of the unjust and false reasons. To call us," he said, "fascists was really an insult. Only from my family, 14 relatives had been murdered in the concentration camps of the Nazis, and there were many similar cases. Of the first elected student council of 28 at the Berlin University, 11 were victims to fascism." So far, Dr. Hartwig. These students, who had already suffered a lot under fascism, were especially sensible for new indoctrinations and were ready to act for their ideas. Among them were Horst Hartwig and Stanislav Kubicki. Kubicki's father was a friend, that is only to illustrate a little bit the manifold background of people. He was a father of the anarchist Erich Mühsam, whom the Nazis had murdered after the occupation of Poland. Especially because these students had the courage to openly utter their criticism, it was necessary that the Americans granted permission to Otto Hess and Joachim Schwarz from the students' work group to publish their students' journal Colloquium. This journal became a forum for non-communist students and free thinkers, where they could publish some insights on the real situation at the Berlin University. In November 1947, the Berlin newspaper Der Tagesspiegel published an article with the header Universitas or Higher Party School, commenting the politically motivated admission policy at the Berlin University, which meant, for example, that lecturers and professors with a correct political opinion replaced those with key positions at the university. Student vacancies were filled with students of SED, and so on. The conclusion was that it would have been best to give the university in the custody of municipal authorities. So, should this not be possible, the author wrote, then it would be the best to call for the elite of our country and with them build a new Universitas Literarum in Berlin. The idea was born. 5 months later, this idea was the ignition spark. When on April 16 in 1948, Otto Hess, Otto Stolz, and Joachim Schwarz were expelled from the Berlin University because they had published an article with critical remarks on the election of the rector of the University unter den Linden, things began to move. Their criticism was that it was more and more important to be a member of the SED than to have the ability and knowledge for a university study. Even former members of the NSDAP, the Nazi party, were admitted at the university if they claimed strong enough to have changed their mind. But students from middle classes, from middle-class families, the so-called Bildungsbürgertum, the well-educated middle classes, were refused just because of their family background. So, on April 23 in 1948, 1,500 students took part in a large protest manifestation in the British sector of the city, outside the Hotel Esplanade. Otto Stolz, the expelled member of the SPD student group, in his speech expressed the students' thought and firmly demanded the founding of a free university in the western part of the city. Now things really started to move. After long discussions where people had to be convinced who had the idea that a second big university would case-harden the division of the city and of Germany as a whole, on May 11, 1948, the Municipal Council assigned the municipal authorities of Great Berlin to make means for the establishment of a free university. Of 105 delegates, 83 accepted the motion of the SPD. The SED rejected it, and the 5 CDU members abstained from voting. In 1948, about 50 leading personalities of Berlin's political, intellectual, and academic life decided that a free university was a necessity in the struggle for a free city of Berlin. Students had demanded this. The city parliament had decided with a broad majority, but could not put the plan into practice without the consent of the four powers: Soviet Union, Britain, France, and the United States. Every possibility to bring the old university unter den Linden under the auspices of the municipal authorities was depleted. Convinced that only a free unification of citizens could fulfill this task, the Assembly formed a committee and elected Professor Ernst Reuter, the then mayor, as chairman, and Professor Edwin Retzlob of the newspaper Der Tagesspiegel. And this newspaper had the interesting, and still has, the interesting motto, rerum cognoscere causa, to know the real reason of the things, as a deputy. Other members were Professor Kurt Landsberg, Professor Schwennecke, Professor Altenburg of Technical University, Otto Hess, one of the expelled students, and other representatives of Berlin cultural life. The names will not tell you so much, but they are, well, for the German public, they are well known. This committee has examined the possibilities regarding departments, faculty staffs, rooms, books, and financial means, and stated that the undertaking could be accomplished. It is now planned to start in October. A manifest was published calling the general public at home and abroad who felt bound in honor for freedom and truth to support the formation of a free university in service for all, where students could research and study in the sense of real democracy, without fear and free of any party political indoctrination. This university should be a new spiritual center for a free Berlin and serve for the recovery of Germany. Representatives of the German and Allied forces and administrations were called to action, especially the students of universities working for freedom, academics, and colleagues. Professors and teaching staff, as well as academic teachers abroad, were called to support this endeavor, with lectures or in any form possible. Friends and sponsors all over the world were asked to support the foundation with money and teaching material. In June 1948, the Berlin blockade started, and the situation between East and West deteriorated due to the currency reform. Sorry. The Soviets withdrew from the four-power administration. And in 1948, in June 26, Western Allied forces began to support West Berlin with the famous airlift. During the currency reform, it was possible, with the help of General Lucius Clay and Kendall Voss, to save some of the money the government had earned by selling a newspaper and a licensed journal, put that on a special bank account with the publisher of Der Tagesspiegel at that time, and this money was now used for the start of the new university. A crucial point for the destiny of the founding of a university was, of course, to gain distinguished scientists for this purpose. Ernst Reuter made this possible. He convinced the German historian Friedrich Meinecke to act as founding rector, who then was already 86. His commitment was only possible because the art historian Edwin Retzlob was ready to support him as acting rector. And on December 4, in 1948, Friedrich Meinecke was ill and could not personally attend the opening festivities, but his speech was broadcasting to the Titania Palace, where the inauguration took place. In a very moving speech, he stressed that the newly founded university was not meant to fight against the old one, but to enter in a respectful scientific contest. So the start. In November already the teaching program had started, so just founded, with 2,140 students who had been chosen from 5,500 applicants. 21 professors were ready for teaching. The medical department did not have an own clinical center, but worked with a hospital, a local one. A library of already 350,000 books were assembled. But there was not enough room for lecturing, and lectures were given therefore in a cinema and even a shed of the Underground Railway. Freie Universität Berlin received at the beginning some buildings of the Kaiser Wilhelm Gesellschaft, which is nowadays Max Planck Gesellschaft. And in 1949, Town Mayor Frank Howley arranged for the takeover of 16 institutes of the Humboldt University, which were then situated in the American sector. So there's this famous Major Howley. From 1949 to 1954, the United States supported Freie Universität Berlin financially. More so the American Ford Foundation, with which Major Howley had established good contacts, but also the American High Commissioner John McCloy, with his Director for Public Relations, Shepard Stone. They worked for this purpose too. Help was urgently needed, what was demonstrated by the increasing numbers of students. In 1951, there were already 5,700, which more than 1/3, namely 2,000, came from the eastern part of the city. The teaching staff counted then 225 people, including professors and research assistants. When the leading representatives of the Ford Foundation, President Paul Hoffman and Henry Ford II, visited Berlin in 1951, they were so enthusiastic about the developments at Freie Universität Berlin that they decided to build a new Auditorium Maximum, a library, and a Mensa building. They supported exchange programs for students and professors with American universities, as well as the setup of research institutes for Eastern European studies, as well as the Institute for North American Studies, which is located here in the neighborhood. Of special importance was the support of a program for visiting lecturers who helped to fill the gaps in the teaching staff. So, when in 1963, John F. Kennedy, one day before his historical speech in front of Rathaus Schöneberg, was awarded the honorary citizenship of Freie Universität Berlin, he again, as did the students in 1947, expressed the vision of a free university interested in the education of world citizens, of human beings who are willing to face the difficult task which free men and women are confronted with in service of the progress of a free society. And now listen to himself a little bit.
Sir, Mr. Mayor, Chancellor, distinguished ministers, members of the faculty and fellows of this university, fellow students, I am honored to become an instant graduate of this distinguished university. The fact of the matter is, of course, that any university, if it is a university, is free. So one might think that the words free university are redundant, but not in West Berlin. So I'm proud to be here today, and I'm proud to have this association on behalf of my fellow countrymen with this great center of learning. Prince Bismarck once said that 1/3 of the students of German universities broke down from overwork. Another third broke down from dissipation, and the other third ruled Germany. I do not know which third of the student body is here today, but I am confident that I'm talking to the future rulers of this country and also of other free countries stretching around the world who have sent their sons and daughters to this center of freedom in order to understand what the world struggle is all about. I know that when you leave this school, you will not imagine that this institution was founded by citizens of the world, including my own country, and was developed by citizens of West Berlin, that you will not imagine that these men who teach you have dedicated their life to your knowledge in order to give this school's graduates an economic advantage in the life struggle. This school is not interested in turning out merely corporation lawyers or skilled accountants. What it is interested in, and this must be true of every university, it must be interested in turning out citizens of the world, men who comprehend the difficult, sensitive tasks that lie before us as free men and women, and men who are willing to commit their energies to the advancement of a free society. That's why you're here, and that's why this school was founded, and all of us benefit from it. It is a fact that in my own country, in the American Revolution, that revolution and the society developed thereafter was built by some of the most distinguished scholars in the history of the United States, who were at the same time among our foremost politicians. They did not believe that knowledge was merely for the study, but they thought it was for the marketplace as well. And Madison and Jefferson and Franklin and all the others who built the United States, who built our Constitution, who built it on a sound framework, I believe set an example for us all. And what was true of my country has been true of your country and the countries of Western Europe. As an American said 100 years ago, was John Milton to conjugate Greek verbs in his library when the freedom of Englishmen was imperiled. The duty of the scholar, of the educated man, of the man or woman whom society has developed talents in, the duty of that man and woman is to help build the society which has made their own advancement possible. You understand it, and I understand it, and am proud to be with you.
A little bit of the atmosphere of that time, I think, is transported by those words. So, in 1968, we had the help of Eleanor Dulles together with the Benjamin Franklin Foundation, and they supported the university by financing a big part of the costs for a clinical center as well as a student's residence. So, Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers, believed, I think, in reincarnation. He wrote the body of Benjamin Franklin, printer, like the covering of an old book, its contents torn out and stripped of its lettering and gilding, lies here, food for worms. But the work shall not be lost. It will, as he believed, appear once more, and in a new and more beautiful edition, corrected and amended by the author. He was born on January 6, 1706, and died so, just as an example. Many students came from these first days of Freie Universität Berlin, also from Eastern Berlin and Eastern Germany as well. They were warmly welcomed and helped by their colleagues at Freie Universität. Also in those times, students had to work to gain an income. It is important to note this strong American support over the years with millions of dollars and otherwise can only be explained by a deep change in the view from both sides. The victorious and occupying powers had first turned into protectors, and then during the blockade and airlift, they even became friends of the Berliners. Freie Universität Berlin was, at that time, a symbol of German-American friendship, and it still is, I think. You can imagine why these facts made the situation so difficult during the manifestations against the Vietnam War in 1968. The official seal of Freie Universität Berlin, which is part of today's logo, has the motto Veritas, Justitia, Libertas, truth, justice, freedom, values which are universal ones, accepted everywhere and worth supporting. Aren't we, Theosophists, totally in line with those values? As seekers of the truth, we strive for justice and freedom in all fields of life. Freedom of thought is a very important factor in the search for truth and the development of a harmonious society. We saw in the history of Freie Universität Berlin how a thought developed in a wonderful international center of learning. We can feel at home at these university grounds. And as explains the university itself, the Latin word veritas, justitia, and libertas, which frame the seal of Freie Universität, stand for the values that have defined the academic ethos of Freie Universität ever since it was founded in December 1948. Veritas is the highest aim of the research and teaching activities pursued at Freie Universität Berlin. In the modern sense, this focus on truth means outlining a clear interest in new findings and insights for the university's academic activities, protecting those activities from the risk of arbitrariness, and observing the standards of good academic practice. It is in the quest for truth that academia finds the core of its intellectual self-image, its methodological sustainability, and its internal drive and dynamism. This is the explanation of the university. Justitia refers to the university's alignment to a generally acknowledged canon of values led by a personal commitment and social responsibility. The term also stands in no small measure for an academic education that is open for young people from all over the world, regardless of social status, sex, national origin, religion, creed, or ethnicity. And I think, as you all know, studies at our university is free of charge. We don't charge any student fees except a very small amount for a semester ticket for the underground and so on. Libertas, freedom, is the basic prerequisite for research and teaching activities to be successful. Only if academia determines its own goals and responsibilities independently of external influences, whether from the state, the church, the business sector, or the wider society, can it meet its standards of achieving new knowledge with social consciousness. As important as each of the university's 3 guiding principles is on its own, the interaction between them is also fundamental. Truth without freedom becomes rigid dogma. Justice without truth, an empty norm. And freedom without justice, a game with nothing at stake. Only where truth, justice, and freedom come together as values to form a greater whole is there space for intellectual commonality and open discourse in an unrestricted interchange of ideas. Freie Universität Berlin believes its role is to provide exactly that kind of space for ideas and its guiding principles to resonate, a place that brings together innovations, researchers and students, concepts and ideas. The responsibility that arises from the 3 guiding principles enshrined in our seal is a living commitment. And that is why now, in the 21st century, Freie Universität still remains true to the impulse behind its founding, taken that idea as guidance for its future development. And just to finish, I have still a little film summing up this little history walk through the university. Yeah? That is to see how it is working now. And of course, you all know in such a short time you cannot really present the whole history. There's much more about it, and yeah.
The historic district of Dahlem in the southwest of Berlin, Germany's capital, is home to Freie Universität. It is an established international network university with numerous partnerships throughout the world and a reputation as a top address in teaching and research.
Der Campus Dahlem, der Anfang des 20. Jahrhunderts.
The Dahlem campus, designed in the early 20th century as a German Oxford, was influenced by such renowned researchers as Albert Einstein, Lisa Meitner, and Otto Hahn. Today, thanks to its network of scientific institutions, it provides ideal conditions for close links between teaching and research.
Today, the university campus remains a unique location, combining science and industry, uniting intellectual life and lifestyle, and harmonizing outstanding architecture with a leafy green suburb. In post-war Berlin, Stanislav Kubicki and others called for a new university, free from the political strictures at the old Berlin University in the Soviet sector.
In spring 1948, we realized studying at Universität unter den Linden in the Soviet sector was no longer an option. We wanted to study free of political influence. When 3 students were expelled for political reasons, it was the last straw. 2,000 of us gathered in the Hotel Esplanade and demanded a politically free university in Berlin's western sectors.
A few months later, on December 4th, 1948, Freie Universität was founded by students and scholars. The founding phase was in the middle of the Berlin airlift.
We had nothing, no books, no phones, no chairs. Due to power cuts, some lectures were even held by candlelight.
Freie Universität was supported by the Western Allies and Berlin's politicians. The new university preserved Humboldt's educational ideal and academic freedom for Berlin. Generous donations from the USA funded the construction of several central building complexes, including the Henry Ford Building and the Benjamin Franklin University Clinic. Freie Universität has symbolized German-US friendship ever since the visit by President John F. Kennedy in 1963.
This school must be interested in turning out citizens of the world.
By the 1950s, the university was well established and enjoyed a high reputation at home and abroad. In the late 1960s, the university was a main location of student protests. The political zeal of those days provided a major impetus toward greater transparency, equality, and democracy in Germany. When the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, Freie Universität revamped its role for a new, reunited Berlin and highlighted its special international profile. 2007 was a landmark year. Freie Universität Berlin became one of the few universities in Germany to be awarded University of Excellence status.
Together with our many partner institutions, we are molding the Dahlem Research Campus into a dynamic scientific site with a strong international profile.
Freie Universität offers over 100 subjects in 15 departments and central institutes, including Charité. The Joint Medical Department with Humboldt-Universität has the largest university clinic in Europe. The broad spectrum of humanities subjects is unique in Germany and run under the auspices of the Dahlem Humanities Center.
Nemzetközi kapcsolatokat tanulok itt Berlinben, a Freie Universitéten, és úgy gondoltam, hogy azért érdemes ide jönni, mert leginkább itt lehet a multikulturalitást testközelből átélni.
Deze universiteit biedt veel verschillende cursussen aan. En omdat de universiteit in Berlijn ligt, is het een ideale plek om geschiedenis en politicologie te studeren.
Basic and applied research in the natural science departments takes an interdisciplinary approach. The wide range of subjects includes the veterinary medicine department with several animal clinics. Many well-known figures from science, politics, society, and culture have visited, studied, or taught at Freie Universität. An international approach has always played a key role. At present, Freie Universität is involved in over 300 exchange programs.
Our students and lecturers come from over 130 countries. Freie Universität has offices at 7 of the world's outstanding scientific locations: Beijing, Brussels, Cairo, New Delhi, New York, Moscow, and Sao Paulo.
Freie Universität Berlin, as an international network university, will continue to work with its partners to play its part in mastering the challenges of tomorrow.
Today, I am prouder of Freie Universität than ever. It is fantastic to see how this university, founded under such difficult conditions, is now one of the top addresses for research.
So, I hope this gave us a little impression about the location where we are. And I think it is something special that in 70 years, from nothing, of course with the support of many, many hands, a university was erected which has managed to get such a reputation. And it is interesting maybe to add that Dahlem was always meant to be an area for science. That was already the case before the World War. There had been plans to draw scientific institutes to Dahlem, and you see the ideas made the ground ready for building up a science center here in Dahlem. So, if there are questions, please. What can I answer? Yeah, Judy, you know a lot. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and now we have to translate it to all our friends. Judy is very proud of having been a student at this university in 1970, in the 70s, put it like that. Yeah? Okay, and of course, I mean, the international programs of this university are outstanding. We have very often, I still say we, although I have retired, you see, connections are strong. But we very often, students called and asked, can I participate in that program to go to Beijing or to go to another country? Our university doesn't have that. So this was, from the beginning, the policy of Freie Universität to open the doors for everybody to be really a world citizen, to know other countries, to study them, and to cooperate. And it is even now, you have seen here in that little film, we are cooperating with Humboldt University, with the former Universität unter den Linden. Yeah? We have now the clinical department together, and these excellence initiatives, which are always going on, they are now done in cooperation. It is not even a contest anymore, but they take up projects together, research projects, and with those common projects, they go into the contest with the other scientific world. So, but Erika, you had a question? Okay, thank you. Yeah, I hope I was not too tiring. There were some facts which I could have missed out, but as the saying is, whose heart is full, the mouth flows. So, yeah, okay.